Hello and welcome to the Drill Down. As you may be able to surmise, my name is Eric Eggers. I'm not Peter Schweitzer. Peter Schweitzer out one more week. He's out there investigating cronyism and corruption and can't wait to share with you his latest blockbuster findings next week. In the meantime, I am so excited to be joined by someone who has a level of expertise on a story that caught my eye and can't wait to get into a kind of a surprising announcement from President Donald Trump recently. President Trump has ordered, at least he's going to try to order, that credit card companies are going to cap credit card interest rates at 10% starting on January 20th, 2026. Now, when I first saw this, it kind of reminded me of another pronouncement. Donald Trump floated the idea of the 50-year mortgage, which I thought at the time, man, terrible idea, but I could see the banks loving it. And then I sort of had the opposite reaction to this idea. I was like, hey, not a terrible idea, but the banks are going to hate it. And therefore, it makes me wonder if he's actually going to be able to get away with it. But it brings, I think, to mind these much larger questions of a very accessible and relatable topic, which is we have a real credit card problem in this country. And so I think about irrational behavior. I can think of no better person to speak to than Carol Roth. She is a 2-time New York Times bestselling author. And her last book, You Will Own Nothing, seems perfect to talk about people who are struggling with credit card debt. What role, if any, should the government play in trying to alleviate these problems? The numbers are actually quite shocking. But Carol, let's just start with, we had a great time talking last time you came on the podcast. Thank you for being here. What was your first reaction when you saw this idea that President Trump, regardless of whether Congress can get on board, as well as a minor detail, do you think the idea of capping credit card interest at 10% is a good idea?
I hate this topic so much, Eric, because it makes me have to defend people that I don't like. And I don't like doing that. But because I am an umpire and I call balls and strikes, I'm not a cheerleader. You're just going to get the straight answer. Okay, this is a Bernie Sanders and AOC proposal that they have proposed a million times. And every time they propose any sort of price control, whether it's a hard price control or a soft one that comes in the form of capping interest rates, the powers that be, the Republicans, independents all come together and say, go home, commies. Don't propose your stupid socialist ideas here. And then a funny thing happens is that President Trump, who likes to, trial balloon a lot of different ideas, I give him credit for that because he's gathering feedback, but he throws it out there. And everyone's like, Men in Black, all of a sudden, like they've wiped their memories and like, wow, that sounds like an amazing idea because he said it instead of Bernie and AOC. This is a terrible idea. And it's not a terrible idea because credit cards are good, because we know that credit cards are terrible. We know that the interest rates are absolutely egregious. In fact, I basically tell everybody, unless you can pay something down in full every month, you should not run a credit card balance. You shouldn't be putting anything on your credit card. I think credit is not for spending, it's for investing. So I hate credit cards, but the reality is that they exist. People do use them for spending. And if all of a sudden the government comes in and puts an arbitrary cap, I mean, it's not like 10 is a number that was come up with by any means other than it sounds good and it's less than what it is today. If you put an arbitrary cap on it, just like with any price control, there are issues. And those issues include the fact that some people, even with decent credit scores, are now not going to be able to access credit anymore, that you're going to have higher fees to own a credit card. They're going to shift the interest payment to a guaranteed upfront fee. And the people who are really desperate, who have the bad credit, who don't want to, say, they shouldn't be paying 30%. Well, now what are they going to do? They're not going to be able to get credit. So they're going to have to go to the black market, and they're going to have to go to Big Vito and Little Vito, who probably charge as loan sharks 70%. And I guarantee you, if you don't like the payback plan with 30%, if you miss a payment to Big Vito and Little Vito, you're going to like that even less. So this is a proposal that has lots of bad consequences. It sounds great. It's going up against a bunch of people we don't like. It's something we don't like, but you got to take personal responsibility. Don't use credit cards, pay them down, do whatever you can to get debt free, and don't look to the government to solve the problem of you.
Carol, that was an excellent answer, which I also, just like this topic, sort of hate because you've given me too many things to have to address it in one response. So first off, to your point about the veto and the little veto, the stats suggest many people will be missing payments because they're missing payments now. Families paid more than $30 billion in credit card fees last year, in 2024, which was a 25% jump from 3 years ago and the highest volume of fees ever recorded. These are like the late fees, right? So people are missing payments on a regular basis. For the record, I use credit cards, but I use them to make myself feel rich when I'm flying. That's basically what I use it for, right? It's like I have to be.
But you don't carry a balance, right? You pay it up every month.
First off, stay out of my wallet, Carol. No, but correct. I do. I try to pay off the balance every month, and $1,000. And it's crazy how much money they make just in terms of each transaction fee. And it is silly. Like, it's like I feel better about myself because I have a certain kind of credit card, which I have the privilege of paying extra for, so I can like sneer at people before I have to get on the same plane as them. It's bad. You
bought into the system. You bought to the gamification and the status of everything. You're the person who's like, doesn't want to lose their Hilton status points. So you go and you check into the hotel and you leave the next day so that you can retain your status for the next year.
Hey, let me just tell you something. This is what makes you elite, is I feel instantly judged by you, but also seen. So thank you, Carol, for that. so let me.
By the way, when I was early in my career, I actually did that with flights. So I'm not judging. I'm actually coming from a place of understanding.
No, we both know people that do this, but listen to this. Like, so this is what gave me this like a little bit of a desire to at least kind of weigh out and flesh out this topic, even though to your point, it's not just the Bernie Sanders and AOC proposal. This is an Elizabeth Warren proposal, which they have absolutely, I think it's a great point, laundered through the president of the United States' social media account. And they're now laundering their idea through the White House in an effort to try to force Congress to do something. And we both know the reason why Congress hasn't done something, probably won't do something, is because the big financial institutions hate this. By the way, the financial institutions, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan Chase CEO, and Richard Fairbank, Capital One CEO, brought home record-setting salaries and bonuses last year because it is a good year to be in the credit card business. There's the biggest gap ever between the average APR that credit cards are charging and the base rate that the Federal Reserve, I think, is offering. So like they are making more money than ever, which means the American people are paying more money than ever. Americans owed the most credit card debt in at least a decade and are paying banks the most money ever recorded in credit card interest, charges, and fees. Nearly half of Americans say their financial situation is worse today than it was a year ago. 31% of shoppers, Carol, we just finished the holiday season, were still paying for the 2024 holidays, even though they did record-setting, Christmas sales this year. And as of January this month, 47% of American credit card holders are carrying credit card debt, maintaining balance. So it's 103 million Americans are sort of floating a balance, which is insane. So that's the reality.
It's terrible, and people need to take personal responsibility. I feel like we need to send everybody to Dave Ramsey and to Caleb Hammer and to other people for a reality check. I know the holiday season is fun and you want to go and buy lots of presents for everyone in the family, but at some point you need to take stock. If you want to make sure the bank executives don't get paid well, then don't use your credit card. If you can use cash, you can not buy things, you can have some personal austerity. This is not something that is a requirement. And if we start taking away personal responsibility and we have the government making decisions, where is it going to stop? I mean, there's a whole slew of behaviors that I think are terrible that I don't think we should have the government involved in. If it's, your personal situation, then it is up to you. That's an affordability crisis that you are creating on your own. There are other affordability crises that you are not creating on your own. Things like the student loan situation where it's, teenagers who are signing up for this, let's attack that. The fact that the Fed has given money, to corporations to go out and buy homes, which I know the president is trying to address, that there are things that we can actually use the government to create incentives and to help with affordability that aren't you problems. Your credit card is a you problem and you need to fix it. And I know nobody likes to hear the tough love. This is not, Eric, it's not going to make me popular. It's going to make me apparently mean and terrible. And I'm sure we'll get a couple of comments about me being Jewish. And of course, I love money, the things like that people always come up with because they don't want to take personal responsibility for their actions. You didn't like the proposal when AOC and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders said it. It's the same proposal.
So to your point, I think, as soon as you start talking about like we need personal austerity, what I'm thinking is, Carol, between the two of us, I think we have 222,000 followers on Twitter, and you have, I think, 220 of those. We could start a personal austerity like social media campaign. Like we could become personal austerity influencers on Instagram, on social media. Like, hey, look at me.
Fun.
Like
people love it. People love that.
Look at me not buying the thing, like come be like us. Cause I think, social media and
it's actually pretty funny. I had an idea like way back when the internet started that was, do you remember Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous?
With Robin Leach, champagne dreams and caviar. Yeah.
It was Lifestyles of the Poor and Unknown. And I think that we need to put more of a lens on that, of the lifestyles of the poor and unknown, because the reality is, I mean, this to be the case, is that most of the people who have money don't show it off. It's the people who don't have money, the strivers or the people who've gotten it in a suspect way. Those are the ones who are trading on the look at me and creating this image on Instagram and throughout social media that to be important, you need to do these things. The people who have money don't tell anybody because then other people hit them up. So they just, live these modest lifestyles. I mean, look at Warren Buffett. Right? He's living in Omaha in a house that he's lived in since he was young. Yes, he built another one that's bigger elsewhere, but that's what he shows to people. He shows people that he's going to McDonald's, he's going to DQ, he's driving his whatever beat up car that he's had forever and going to a normal house in the suburbs. And we need to normalize that in this country.
Warren Buffett going to McDonald's and DQ might have a tremendous portfolio. I have questions about his cholesterol. I'm just going to put that out there. You know what I mean? I'm not sure.
He's in his 90s. He's in his 90s and doing amazing and has been working up until, a couple of weeks ago. So that sounds like, it's a pretty good prescription to follow.
So, okay, if you don't like this idea and you didn't like it, whether it's from Donald Trump or from AOC or Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, let's talk about like the root cause, because Donald Trump didn't wake up one day and decide, hey, you know what I'm going to do as president of the United States? I'm going to go against big banks who just had their best year ever. Bank stock up 29% in 2025, which was double the gain of the U.S. market overall. But he woke up and he's trying to do a thing because he's trying to address the affordability crisis, right? And as you noted, there are real numbers behind that. Grocery costs up about 3% from the year before. Electricity costs up 5%. Coffee prices up 19%. Beef's up 15%. So, stuff is more expensive. And, I tend to, this is a conservative leaning podcast. I'm not a huge fan of big government, like putting their thumb on the scale and picking winners and losers and stuff. So what do you think is the appropriate remedy or the appropriate role for someone who's attempting to win the midterms for his party? But if, as conservatives, it is kind of odd because like you're trying to fight with one hand behind your back. Like the Democrats, they'll do anything. Hey, let's create some stimulus. Let's buy out this industry. Let's do this, whatever we want. Republicans don't necessarily always play by those rules. So what could or should they do?
So the lowest hanging fruit is fixing the student debt situation. The government is the largest predatory lender in the entire country. As I mentioned, they give loans to teenagers or people who are barely out of high school, sometimes in high school, co-sign 5 and 6 figures, who really haven't learned what ROI is, even though we pay for their education. Somehow that doesn't come up within the first 12 or 13 years. So the easiest thing to do would be to get the government out of the student loan business, just, completely get out of it, stop making all that money available for a huge wealth transfer from young people to college administrators. I think that that's an absolute no-brainer. Make the colleges be on the hook, make it dischargeable by bankruptcy. Make this be underwritten like every other loan. The fact that we are taking advantage of these young people and it's being led by the government is absolutely disgusting. And I think that they could also, change the percentage rate on anything that has been a government loan, and they can rationalize that, and then that'll lead them into this addressing the second issue, which is the healthcare costs in this country, which we know the Republicans understand how bad the Non-Affordable Care Act was, but don't do anything. There's been absolutely no credible proposals put forward. So the education piece is going to resonate with young people, right? It's going to get the young people on board. It's going to solve an issue. And then it's going to lead you into having to address one of the biggest issues in terms of affordability. And I think, probably the one area where the Democrats have the stronghold that if you solve this issue, it really weakens everything else for them. And that's healthcare. And so that's where I would focus. I also think on the home ownership side, they can work with the banks, which again, the banks have had many bailouts. They're doing just fine. Make mortgages portable again, make them portable, make them assumable. I think that they've talked about that a little bit, but like assumability is a non, like, it's the most obvious idea, because you can say, well, the banks wouldn't want that. Well, the fact of the matter is there's all of this stock that's tied up. They're getting no business. If you make those rates assumable and they get a right of first refusal on the rest of the mortgage, well, then that gives them at least a slice of something to work on. And again, the banks owe us for all the bailouts. So I think if you're going to push something, I would push the assumability of a mortgage that's already in the market versus something like a cap, a price control on credit cards.
So that actually is an idea that I saw President Trump also float on social media. And I thought, we did a podcast a few months ago about the affordability crisis, the housing crisis. And,
Yep.
Ironically, your book, You Will Own Nothing, is also the title of a paper that was featured at the World Economic Forum. And, this kind of nation of renters idea has been very popular. So I've mentioned, like, the 50-year mortgage, terrible idea. But I do think the idea of a portable mortgage is an excellent one. You use the phrase again, and forgive me, I'm, in my mid-40s, I've only been a homeowner for 15 years. Was there a time in which you could transfer mortgage rates?
Well, I can speak on the assumability side. You currently, about 20% of mortgages are assumable, and most of those are related to veteran mortgages that are done through the government. But obviously, Fannie and Freddie are going to continue to play a bigger role. And again, with the banks doing so well and putting pressure on them, but also creating an opportunity for them to win at the same time, I think that's the route that can be gone. It used to be that a much larger percentage of mortgages were assumable because, I can't speak as much to the portability side, but the assumability side, somebody's already put a mortgage on a specific asset. You're not changing the asset. So as long as the buyer's qualified, you obviously wouldn't want to do it for a non-qualified buyer, but as long as the buyer's qualified, you've already, said that I've got this loan against this particular property. Now, granted, they've gone out and they've repackaged them and resold them, whatever. But again, this creates an opportunity because prices have gone up for that bridge, that, whatever that gap is in the purchase price, to be refinanced at the current rate or to be financed at the current rate with that particular lender, so that the new buyer gets a blended rate that's more affordable, makes it, makes them be able to get into the home, but also creates an opportunity for the bank to do some business.
I like this a lot. Like, the school zone sucks, the backsplash is outdated, but the mortgage rate's much lower, right? So maybe I'm more inclined to buy this house, kind of thing. It's it changes the math. No, it's a good idea. So that's of all the ideas. Let me ask you this last question, and we appreciate your time. And I know this is something you spoke about a lot. The student loan thing, because you mentioned a couple of times, you've obviously put thought into it. The Biden administration's answer was, hey, we're just going to kind of pay these things off. We're going to cancel it on behalf of people who, shouldn't have taken out, 6-figure loans and majored in like art, gender studies kind of thing. How come nothing gets done? I mean, what's the biggest obstacle keeping your idea for what the Trump administration could do about the student loan crisis from happening? Like, what private interest is standing in the way?
I mean, I don't know. It's never been proposed before, right? We haven't seen anybody put something forward that says we're going to get the government back out of student loans. That used to be the case. And then Obama basically nationalized the large part of the student lending business, and the price of college has just increased to the point where students can't get an ROI on it. I would imagine it has something to do with the fact that the interest that is paid, or theoretically paid, since it seems like nobody's actually paying it on these student loans, is supposed to go and help pay for healthcare. So I would imagine that is the reason. But since we know they need to address that anyway because of all the subsidy issues that keep coming up, just go ahead and do young people a solid and stop enriching these colleges and universities, many of whom have, huge endowments. I mean, it's just absolutely insane the amount of money. They have nonprofit status in many cases. They are getting a lot of benefits. And the idea that we're doing a wealth transfer between young people and this administrative class is just absolutely insane. So I would like to see somebody propose it. I would like to see the Democrats be the ones to stand up and say, no, we're not going to make this more affordable for young people, because they cannot do that, right? That is their base. So this not only is a great idea, it gets young people, but it forces the Democrats to go on the record here one way or the other. Either they're going to help or they're going to be a barrier. And so it's the most obvious low-hanging fruit that just continues to dumbfound me that they have not pushed that, especially when the Trump administration started to go after the universities, on sort of a social contract basis, right, for social issues. And there's a serious economic issue that's, right in the face. That's a huge flashing neon sign. And the fact that they haven't homed in on that is surprising to me.
It's a great idea. It's great insight. This is why we like to have Carol Roth on. Of all the great ideas, I think the personal austerity social media account remains, I think, at the top of the list. I'm like, hey, post 1 in the morning, head up a food pantry. Post 2, go to the library. Post 3, here's me reading. And then I'm in bed at 8 o'clock because I can't afford any streaming services. Total money spent, $0.
Let me tell you, Eric, when I started out, I had $40,000 in college loans, and this was back in the mid 90s. So that's like $120,000, whatever it is today. And what did I do? I was in a 400 square foot studio. My bedside table was a cardboard box with a sheet over it. And, I ate rice out of boxes and, nothing until I could pay down all my debt and never get in debt again. And, you can choose not to do that, but then you're going to be stressed out for the rest of your life. So would you rather have, something that you deem to be an unpleasant way of living with no treats for a very short period of time and then not have that stress and pressure for the rest of your life? Or do you want to live a lifetime of always feeling like you're under the gun? That is your choice as an individual. It can be done if you need help. There are different ways you can add to your income, make more income. You can cut your expenses. There are different ways to approach it. You can do a little bit of both, but you have to do it. You have to get out of debt, because compounding is a wonder. If you have it working for you in the markets, it helps to make you wealthy, but you have it working against you. You're going to be under the gun for the rest of your life. So do it. And then, Jamie Dimon won't get his big bonus.
No, and that's exactly the problem. And listen, you're preaching to the choir because my wife and I, we've paid off houses, right? Even though people would say, oh, you could be getting a better interest rate.
Right.
You could, the lower interest rate, you could be making more money in the market or whatever. But, it's kind of a personal luxury tax. Like, hey, this is peace of mind. And the problem is, Carol, and you know this, no one makes money on you when you do that. And so no one encourages you to do that. But it's absolutely right, which is why you should have, I think, you need to listen to Carol Roth, guys. Buy her books, go to her websites, follow every idea she has, including her big hair. She's absolutely wonderful. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate you, the audience's time, for joining us. I know you have a lot of different options, but we always like it when you spend our time or your time with us. So thank you for joining us on The Drill Down. You can always find more episodes at thedrilldown.com. Please like and subscribe, leave a comment. And we'll be back with more episodes next week. Thanks so much. Till next time.